I'd like to welcome our next session. There's a quick turn here. And to that point of partnerships, we've got Phil Dion, Chief Customer Officer at American Electric Power, along with Matt Fork, Vice President of Community Economic Development and Energy Solutions at Ameren, is joining Kellen Schefter, Director of Electric Transportation at EEI. And I think it's a great segue in all of this partnership. And please come on up, guys. Welcome and take a seat. We've heard a lot about partnership. That's like the P word today, and I'm really excited to learn more and hear about this discussion here. It's called Scalable Approach to Fill the EV Fast Charging Infrastructure Gap. And so welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And Kellen, I'll pass it to you.
Great. Can you all hear me okay? Good on audio? Excellent. Well,
you're good.
Good? Awesome. Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate GridWise for giving us this platform today. So we'll jump right into it. I think you even introduced our panel so far. So I'll let them introduce themselves with my first question a little bit more, but just wanted to flag that today we are talking about EV infrastructure, particularly working across electric company boundaries to really fill in the gaps that's needed to support drivers and make long-distance trips. So it's a real important aspect, I think, of the EV market, electric vehicle market, but we'll get into all that. So let me start with an opening question, and I'll ask each of you to potentially expand upon your own role if you'd like and what your company is doing. But just to start, tell us a little bit about how electric transportation fits into your company's overall strategy. So I'll start with you, Matt. Go ahead.
Yeah, first, Kellen, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be on the panel with Kellen, you, and Phil. And yeah, thank you for this opportunity. So my name is Matt Fork. I work for Ameren. We're a energy company, electric and natural gas, headquartered in St. Louis. We serve about 6 million people in outstate, lower state Illinois, and about 2/3 of Missouri. Electrification is really important to our customers and to us for two primary reasons. It intersects with our transition to clean energy. We have net carbon zero goals, and also it helps with customer affordability. How does it help with customer affordability? We're a fixed cost business, so to the extent we have more billing units to divide against those same fixed costs, it keeps costs stable and predictable for all of our customers. So it's really part and parcel to our strategy for our customers for clean energy and for customer affordability to keep our prices really competitive.
Great. Phil, I imagine something similar for you all, but anything you'd want to add to that from a strategic level, how your company is thinking about this?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. Richie, thanks for the invite. Phil Dion, I'm the Chief Customer Officer for American Electric Power. Guess most folks are familiar with this, but with 11 states in the regulated portfolio, I have one clear vision. No. There is a little bit of schizophrenia in dealing with this, but the primary reasons that Matt talked about are important. But as I look at it, I get excited about this from a true energy efficiency, demand side management, and asset allocation model. We in the industry we have energy efficiency programs, but they're quite frankly either conservation or electric efficiency. They're not energy efficiency. It's not BTU to BTU, a reduction more efficient either in cost or in how the energy is consumed. Electric vehicles are that. And so you have the benefit of the comparison between diesel to kWh, but you also have the great benefit of it is truly a load that is flexible. If you've been involved in a lot of energy efficiency programs or DSM programs, I'll pick thermostats, which we all like. You're not going to tolerate a 10-degree up or down change for multiple hours. You might tolerate a couple of degrees for a couple of hours, but no more than that. Electric vehicles, totally different story. If you need to charge your vehicle, if you can put a dryer plug in your garage, no matter which vehicle you have right now, 5 to 6 hours, if you drained it, you're charged up. And so from that perspective, we essentially have from 9 at night till 6 in the morning, depending on the season, to move that load. And so from that perspective, it's incredibly important. And then the bottom line is that we serve everyone. And so when you're able to move that load, it improves your asset allocation, right? So whether you own an electric vehicle or not, if you're part of our system and we have more of those, to Matt's points, those billing units, if I can move them to those hours, which you naturally are, I'm not disrupting your lifestyle, and you're naturally probably going to charge anyway, then not only do you benefit, but everyone on the system benefits. And that's really the exciting part about electric vehicles for me.
Well, that's great. And I think that's really helpful framing, because now we're going to talk about sort of a subset of electric transportation, which is really solving for that need, using EVs as a primary vehicle. You're going to need to make those long trips. That's how people buy cars, and we kind of understand that. And thinking about some of these collaborations that you all have pioneered and that we'll be talking about more, to think beyond your boundaries and really think about the customer needs. So let's start, Matt, with you. And I'm going to bring up, I think, our first slide here if I can. I think that's our last one, so I just gave away the big, the big reveal. If we could jump back one more, that one.
There it is.
Go. Forget what you just saw. No, it's public now. So Matt, starting with you, because you both were really pioneers with this, I think, and this is something unique in our industry, really thinking beyond your borders and really thinking sort of how the customer might use an EV, right? So Matt, if you could give us a little background about how the Midwest EV charging collaboration came together and what you were attempting to solve for here, that would be super helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. So really exciting. Most of the time, as people know, utilities focus just with their core customers. We have defined service area territories, and seldom do we look beyond those boundaries, right? From a reliability or efficiency perspective, we look inside our fences. And as we at Ameren started thinking about this next wave of electric cars coming out, I mean, it's really exciting. I forget all the numbers, but roughly speaking, there are, 50, 60 models on the market now, and there'll be, double that or so on the market in 30 months from now. And so that's exciting. Customers have options, and we want customers to be thinking EVs for environmental and customer affordability reasons. Plus, the technology is just really cool, right? It is. And so when our customers think about an EV, they're not going to be just thinking driving across town, going to work, going to church, taking kids to soccer. It's, we're based in St. Louis, so how do you get from St. Louis to Kansas City, right? How do you get from Indianapolis to Oklahoma City? How do you get from, Denver to Detroit? And so, how do you make it easy? And so we Ameren, Missouri, and Ameren, Illinois, we start at the Illinois-Indiana border, and we go about 2/3 of the way through Missouri. And so we started thinking, we could ask maybe Evergy, which is headquartered in Kansas City and goes through about half of Kansas, to join us, and we get, 3 states. But then we really started just thinking bigger and broader. And the other thing about the Midwest, people don't generally think of Midwest being innovative for a number of things, and maybe even environmentally leaning. Yes. Thank you. And we want people to know in the Midwest that we're excited about EVs and we have a pulse, and that we want inventory to come to the Midwest, because a lot of inventory is going to the zero emission states, a lot of it's going to the coast, and so we started just reaching out. It's an imperfect science, quite frankly, Kellen, to reach out to our fellow investor-owned utilities across the Midwest. But we put together a document, we call it just an MOC, Memorandum of Cooperation, which pledged to those who signed that we would work in good faith within the regulatory jurisdictions that we serve to put in a fundamental or a foundational charging network. And how we defined that was EV charging, fast charging every 30 to 40, 30 to 50 miles across the major highways that we serve. That will give people, our customers, the confidence to buy an EV and know that it's not just limited to being able to get back to their house and charge on that 220 right. that Phil talked about. We had 6 initial signees. So if you kind of think east to west, DTE, CMS, Ameren, Illinois, Ameren, Missouri, Evergy, and Oklahoma Gas and Electric. We signed it late year 2019. We had a huge announcement set for Earth Month, which is April of 2020. And then something happened right before that took all of the press for really the whole year, which was obviously COVID. So we tabled it. We announced in September of 2020 and got a lot of excitement out of it. Just to cut to the punchline, we've had 6 additional utilities join, including the first electric cooperative. So Midwest Utilities, which covers 117 miles in Kansas, got us all the way through Kansas on I-70. So we are 11 investor-owned utilities and 1 electric cooperative, which covers about 12 states in the Midwest. And then working in parallel with AEP, Phil and his story. So maybe Kellen, I'll let you hand it, but there was other really cool things happening in other parts of the country.
Well, yeah. So Phil, let me turn to you for that. So I'll flip to the next slide here. You put together with AEP a coalition yourself, but let me let you explain sort of the genesis of that and how that kind of evolved over time.
Yeah, so it's similar, right? The utilities think very similarly. Our focus was in and around, we had made a pledge for our vehicles and especially our light duty fleet to be all electric by 2030, and then other pledges. And as we began looking around our service territory, we knew that our vehicles were not all going to be Teslas. And we also knew that as much as the money for Electrify America was on the major highways, there were areas in our major routes in our areas that were not covered by electric vehicle charging. So we began looking at it as a little bit as a utility would, from a system planning's perspective of how can we accomplish the jobs that we have to do. And then as we did that, we began thinking about the customer as well, and began thinking through the customer lens, saying, hey, if we're going to put these in, and we know that these are difficult, we know that the economics of it are incredibly difficult, especially right now, anything we can do to leverage value out of these things. And so if our customers can charge there as well, even better. So we began putting together, and as I said, we're 11 states, we began plotting these out. And then what you quickly realize, which is I think what Matt talked about, is, hey, we border all these other electric companies, and it would be really dumb to put one on the east side of Muncie, Indiana, and have Duke put one on the west side of Muncie, Indiana. This doesn't seem like a very good use of time, effort, or capital. And so we began doing the same. And so we reached out to various utilities, and that included Duke and Dominion and Entergy and Southern, and then TVA as well. So I'm very happy that the Tennessee Valley Authority is part of this. And we began putting together our coalition, and really, it started from we want to allow our customers and our employees to use these things too. My goodness, we might be able to get most of the East Coast going here, so let's see how far we can go. And I'm pleased to report that by July of actually this year, we had 14 members and about 60 million customers of service territory. And so, as we were going through all of those things, one of the things we do as utility folks is we plan and we plan, and then we plan again. And we also do this thing called mutual assistance, right? There aren't too many other industries that go out. I'm yet to see Verizon put up AT&T cell towers when they had a natural disaster, right? So we thought, okay, Matt's got a coalition, we've got a coalition. This doesn't seem to be the utility way. Let's take the best of Matt's coalition, take the best of our coalitions, and then let's see if we can, put it a little bit on steroids and see if we can do something a little bit more than just perhaps the Midwest and East and Southwest. And so engaged Kellen and the EEI team, and I think you all saw the map. So the big reveal, right, has been. Well, yeah. At least you didn't bury the lead. Good for you on that.
Start with the big headline. So this is where we are today, and thank you for that background. I think this is really exciting. We announced yesterday that not only have these two coalitions now merged and really given this to EEI to administer going forward, but we've added a bunch of members as well. So now we can truly call this a national effort. We're really excited about that. I think our count now is a little bit more than 50 investor-owned electric companies, including the co-op and TVA that you each brought along as well. So really excited about this. And again, the common goal here is ensuring that there is sufficient charging along major corridors in each of these territories such that EV drivers can make those trips with confidence. That's kind of the overall objective here. But how that gets accomplished is really up to each company. And that brings me to another question, sort of how you all are going about this, because I think that could be reflective of how each of the members in this coalition are really thinking about it. So maybe I'll go back to you, Phil, first on that
Sure.
one. AEP, you cover a lot of ground. And I think even across your jurisdiction, you're probably not doing everything the same everywhere. But just as a quick kind of highlight, what are you putting in place to kind of accomplish this?
So I know I'm not going to be able to change the language, but we're trying to look through it through the customer lens. And people talk about range anxiety. If you drive an electric vehicle, you don't have range anxiety. You know how far your car will go. You have charger anxiety. That's what you have. You don't know if it's going to be there. You don't know if it's going to work, and you don't know how fast it's going to. Right? And so the combination of all of those things is what drove us on our policy. And so we began looking at, all right, if we're going to put in chargers or utilities, we need redundancy, right? You can't get somewhere. If you have 3 miles left and the charger is broken and there's only one charger, that's not going to be acceptable, right? So for us to conduct our business. So we began working with our coalition to say, okay, what should the charging speeds be? What should the redundancy be? And really, Kellen set a floor as opposed to a ceiling. And that has allowed a lot of flexibility for, for customers and for companies rather. For instance, our good friends in National Grid, they have very positive legislation and other things to help them along.
Yeah.
And so they're able to meet that floor very quickly and accelerate, whereas some of our other companies were like, look, this is the minimum we're comfortable doing it, and we'll do it. But we'll want to make sure that we have some other issues that some other companies don't. So from our perspective, we felt the floor was the best idea, and then we also said, look, any model will work. If you just want to build up to the stub, that's fine. If you want to partner with somebody, that's great. If you want to own and operate them, hey, that's allowed too. And I'll tell you that was one of the real breakthroughs for us, because I had to solve that for AEP, and we'll have probably all 3 in our system. And so by wrestling with ourselves, we were able to put out a model that was quickly adopted. I mean, it's, we've all been in this industry a long time, right? And so, Matt talked about his timeline. My timeline, this started for us really the beginning of last October. So, utilities get accused of moving at glacial speed all of the time, right? And we're fuddy-duddies and we can't do anything. Well, that's a year. That's 1 year. It's 50 plus, it's 120 million customers, and it's going to be steel in the ground. Is it going to be everything? No, of course not. Is there room for the market? Yes. But one thing utilities do a really good job of is we either replace the market or we stimulate the market. And our goal is to really try to stimulate that market and create the demand so that more chargers are out there. But again, I know I'm not going to win you all over with charger anxiety, but that was our focus.
No, I like that term, and I think it's starting to catch on. All right, as the EVs get better, there's more range. You have less of that concern, and it's more about, will it work? What's the experience? Can I pay for it? Availability in every kind of flavor. But Matt, what about you for your companies that you're representing here with Ameren? What sort of structures or levers are you pulling to get it done in your territories, just to contrast with how Phil's thinking about it?
Yeah, I'm not sure there is a contrast. I think the themes Phil mentioned are the themes that you'll see really across the 50-plus utilities, on the map.
Yeah.
Drilling down to Ameren, Illinois, Ameren, Missouri, and then our, Evergy, which again is the utility on the west side. But, so for Ameren, Missouri, for example, we have, let me back up. I think each of the 50 utilities will have slightly different, right? There are going to be these common themes, but slightly different. So, within Ameren, Missouri, we have, regulatory approval to build out this fundamental network. We started that in 2019. We started that in 2020. We actually finished it this year in 2021. So if you're in Missouri, especially on the eastern side, you're going to have a fundamental charging network to plug into.
Right.
Ameren, and we had the regulatory agreements to do that, and we did it with a partnership model. So we don't own it. Ameren, Missouri does not own the charging stations, but we worked with partners to own them and to get them in place. We paid an incentive to that partner to put them in, and that was good for our customers and good for regulators. Going east, Ameren, Illinois is different. Just had some landmark legislation passed recently that allows for some facilitation of EV charging to be built. So now they have a regulatory green light. Also working with regulators in Illinois. Again, by contrast, I guess Evergy was an early adopter of EV, and they own it all, right? They own all the infrastructure in and around the Kansas City area. So even within that, tight geographic area, 3 different models, if you will, 3 different timelines. But I think the spirit of this is, for us as utilities, those that have signed the MOC that you see in front of you, is to work in good faith to get that infrastructure put in place.
Great.
So we don't have that charger anxiety.
Absolutely. All right, well, I want to jump to some audience questions in a little bit, but I did want to hit on a couple other things that I think are probably timely here. So there's a big bipartisan infrastructure package that was signed recently, November 15th, I believe. And it really enables potentially up to $7.5 billion for EV charging in the U.S., which is pretty unprecedented from the federal government. $2.5 billion is for a competitive grant program that really is for other alt fuels as well, so you can get hydrogen and petroleum and propane and natural gas competing for that pool of money. But then there's a $5 billion formula grant program allocated to states. Our understanding is this will go through state DOTs. State DOTs will come up with a plan to get their federal allocation, and they'll be funding some of this as well now, which is really exciting. How do you see that accelerating the work of this coalition? How does the coalition fit into that? And I think as our starting position, we think this all needs to be leveraging each other, right? As much as $7.5 billion is, the Biden administration initially wanted $15 billion, right? So that's already cut in half, and that even alone probably wasn't enough to get done what we need to have happen over the next decade. So how do you envision potentially working within your own companies, but also as part of this coalition and making sure that those federal dollars are really spent efficiently and leveraging what's already out there? Matt, I can go back to you for that one first.
Yeah, you bet. Again, I guess I just go back to the need.
Yeah.
So I'm a new EV owner, and I live in St. Louis, and I took a trip to Jefferson City last weekend or 2 weekends ago. The first trip where I could have charger anxiety. I knew there was fast charging in Columbia, Missouri, but that wasn't on my path. And so I stopped in Kingdom City, if you know where that is. Geography test later. There was charging, but it was slow. So I really got like 3 miles there, which didn't, for an hour, which didn't help. And the fast charger, I didn't have the right adapter. Okay, so let's go to Jeff City, which is 30 minutes away. I actually went to Ameren's offices because we can charge there, but it's a Saturday and we time it. So so it was turned off, which I didn't know was going to happen.
You're cheap too?
Yeah, right?
Great.
I mean, what the? But anyway, so that didn't work. And then the fast charger in that town didn't have the right adapter. So long story short, I ended up having to drive to Columbia after I visited my parents, which is why I was in Jeff City, which was, almost like 45 minutes out of the way. But fast charged, got home. And so just, to back up, there is a real need for the fundamental charging infrastructure and some maybe consistency around the customer experience. And now that we have, the map in front of us with, 50 plus utilities working on the fundamental network, now it's probably time for us to look around the corner and ask some of those questions, which are hard questions. But I think this, what Phil talked about, we can move quickly when the need is there, I think, and we as a utility industry can help lead some of those conversations around our customers' experience and how to make that more uniform and just easy. So that's one thing. Specific to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, you're right, about 2/3 of that new spending, about 2/3 of the $550 billion will be allocated through traditional state allocation models, which is a big part of the EV charging dollars. Just one example for Missouri, for example, it's just under $100 million over 5 years, so $20 million a year. I'm guessing that we maybe didn't spend collectively more than $1 million on EV charging infrastructure in Missouri last year. Incentives that Ameren paid, maybe our electric cooperatives put in a few stations. So it's 20 times more infrastructure investment dollars for EVs than existed before. State General Assemblies have to allocate and appropriate and draw those dollars down. So I think they're needed. So I think for us as utilities, speak for Ameren, working with our states, working with our energy departments, natural resources, wherever those dollars are going to go, and just make sure that that infrastructure to get those dollars allocated and put in the ground is in place. It's important. It's needed. But it's a huge sea change to what we are used to seeing. I'll speak from Missouri, and I'm sure many states are like that. For example, a 10 to 20-fold addition in dollars, and that's going to be tough to get those plans in place quickly.
Well, and we're hoping this, coalition will be a bit of a platform for states to work with. Actually, right now they can see how the electric companies in their state are already thinking through these problems. They're a good partner to work with, and you can kind of think again beyond the state boundaries as well. How this fits together. But Phil, any initial thoughts on how your company may be looking to partner here, given the federal influx of funding here?
Yeah, I'll probably be a little brief because I think Matt covered a lot of it. But I just want to stop for a second and just say, we've just accepted we're getting essentially $7.5 billion. That's never happened before. Money for electric transport, it hasn't happened before, right? It's been an experiment over here, and some guy in California was making electric vehicles for a little while, and then he made a rocket or something. But anyway, the significance of that is, I think it's understated. We've just all accepted it. So I always marvel at, okay, this is happening, right? That we've all accepted it. There's money going towards it, and it's the future, right? So we have to prepare. We're now in the fueling business, and that's something we haven't done before. And so when we talk about this, at least when I do, we deal with energy managers all the time. We don't deal with fleet managers. So from my perspective, there's a lot of work to be done. So the money coming is great, but I need to start talking to my state DOT. I need to start talking to fleet managers. I need to have people, talk to those fleet managers, and just don't talk to them in KWH. Please don't do that, right? So there's a lot to this bill to like. There's a lot of work to be done, Kellen. And so, like I said, I think Matt covered the things. Those are just two perspectives of, this is how I think about it, and it's areas that we've really got to pay attention to, and we've got to work through, because the last thing I want is a lot of stimulus, I'll call it stimulus money, but this money to not get allocated to our communities, because number one, that's bad for my company, right? We sell electricity, that's what we do, but two, the regulators are going to ask us, hey, what have you done? What have you done to help the communities? I see this pile of money. What are you doing? So it is really incumbent on us to think through that and work differently in those areas.
Yeah. Well, Phil, you seem like you're in a bit of a role there, so let me go back to you for just a moment. And the theme here is grid infrastructure for this meeting, and wanted to have you field a question that we get a lot, which is the grid ready for all this wave of EVs that we're seeing? And
yes.
I completely
agree.
Yes,
it's done.
Simple answer, yes. Yeah. I mean, because I think in context, this is a little bit of sometimes hurry up and wait. People see the hype. We've been talking about EVs for a long time. I've been EEI at a little more than 8 years now. So back in 2013, we were really excited about EVs. Now it's starting to feel real. Yeah. But is the grid going to be there when it needs to be? And I think I obviously think it will be, and you just said yes. But could you expand on that a little bit with your
I don't want to be flippant about it and say it's much ado about nothing. That's not accurate. But we didn't talk about this when air conditioning came online and people bought air conditioning. Oh, is the grid ready for air conditioning? But they shut off my electricity. Is Pico not working? I probably, it's all over.
We're still going. Sorry, I think we lost.
I think the answer was yes, and I was supposed to shut up. So, so yes, but I can probably enunciate fairly well. But the bottom line is that there are thousands of people that work for the utilities, and all they do is plan. Sometimes we overplan, and we've been planning for hundreds of years. And the car fleet is not going to turn over overnight. And so as it turns out, what we do really, really well, which is plan for contingencies and long-range planning, it works perfectly for this. We're going to have to be ready for fleets. Those are the one things I will say. If you have a concern, it's large fleets locating in load centers. We have to be working with those folks. 400 vehicles, that's 4 megawatts, can be up to 4 megawatts. 1,000 vehicles, you're talking 10 plus. Okay, that's a feeder level issue. That's a planning issue. Yes, we need to be engaged with those people now to plan for those. But everything else, it's okay. As it turns out, this is what we do, and we're ready for it.
So apologies, we lost the audio feed for a moment, but I think you caught the punchline there. So.
We came back right. We came back.
You got it, Richard. It's up. It's up now.
Came back just in time.
We just came back right as you were saying this is like the perfect solution. And so maybe someone virtually might have missed some of that, but I think you did come fully back there. But we certainly can go to audience Q&A. But
sure, yeah. Matt, I just want to check, did you want to expand on that at all, or are you anything to add?
No, I concur with his first answer. Yes.
Perfect, okay.
Please go to the audience.
Well, yeah, I think we've got about 15 minutes, and we're happy to field some questions. Thanks.
And I am taking the prerogative to ask the first question, because it is a burning question I've had for months now. And earlier this morning, John Rhodes talked. I asked him about the DOE-DOT task force around electric vehicles. I worry that at the state level, well, I know at the federal level, those conversations are not fulsome and ripe. And at the state level, I'm wondering to what extent, when you were developing this EV highway coalition, that you included your state departments of transportation, because the majority of the money for the EV charging infrastructure is going to flow through the DOT through programs that, well, the corridor program, which traditionally has not given money out in grants. It's mainly worked with DOTs for signage. And this is, as you all know, going to take an incredible amount of coordination with the utilities to deploy this network. How did you bring your state DOTs into this conversation, and how can we think about over the next 2 years helping to strengthen those collaborative conversations so that the money flows into the right places?
Great question. And so much of our society is divided between energy and transportation, federal agencies, state agencies, so much of our work. But either of you want to start with how you're thinking about that?
Yeah, I'll speak. So let me just speak from like a Missouri experience, and I'm not as well educated on Illinois. So what we did before we built out the foundational network that I referenced that Ameren partnered with and provided incentives for the network, we sat down with a cross function of investor-owned municipals, cooperatives, along with regulators, regulatory staff, and natural resource leaders. So I don't know if DOT was involved in that, but I guess the point is it was a good stakeholder group that really looked at the entire state and where does that fundamental network need to be, and we plotted it out, and then worked with each of those energy providers. That was some of that was some of that early Volkswagen VW money that was coming to states. So that was maybe what allowed that tipping point to happen. But I guess I think we had a good plan. I guess the punchline is we had a good plan as a state, and we knew where the dollars could go to have biggest impact for the state. And I think maybe that's a formula we could follow with as these monies come down and our state allocates them is who should be in the planning room. Let's have a good plan where this infrastructure would go that allows us to maximize the dollars for our customers and for the people that live in those states. So one model that's worked.
So my answer is I'm concerned, but I'm hopeful. I think Matt getting out of the gate, us getting out of the gate, we've kind of put a stamp on, hey, we know what we're doing here. And sometimes when I've been in government half my career and utilities the other half, which makes me incredibly risk averse apparently. But I do know that sometimes you get these mandates and then you don't know what to do. Having that pseudo public, partner to say, hey, it's okay, we can help you. That's good. Matt talked about our experience with the VW funds. That I think was helpful. But I'm still concerned because we got stimulus money to help our customers pay their bills, and it didn't flow. It did not the way it should have. And so one of the things that I think is helpful in this, or I'm a little bit more optimistic, is one, we saw what happened with the stimulus dollars, and we've said as a community that can't happen again. We've got to get into our state DOTs. We need to be part of this discussion, and we need to help them. The second part is that we've shown that we can mutually plan, and I think part of the reason we fell down on the stimulus dollars is that I was concerned about my customers. I didn't care about Matt's. Well, now with this coalition, we care. We care about everybody's customers. And so the impetus for that allows us, and we have the scale to say, hey, we represent these customers and we have something to say. So I'm concerned though. I mean, I am very concerned because there is a lot of effort. I'm hopeful, like I said, because we have set up a model where it's set up, but the model was not set up for infrastructure dollars. This was all set up, as in our case, gap filling and infrastructure where the market wasn't going to show up. I'm hopeful that we'll get some value out of that coalition, though, the way I spoke about it.
Excellent. Other questions? Oh, yeah, looks like we had.
This working? Yeah. I have been driving EVs now for about 12 years.
Wow.
And I feel very privileged to be able to do that, but I have to say I don't have any stories about not being able to charge when I needed. I do have stories about picking up people who drove ICE vehicles that ran out of gas. So it goes both ways. Have you considered looking at, or have you looked at, the Tesla model? Because I don't know how many billions of dollars they've spent, but they have built out quite a network. There's always some place to charge, even more than enough now, every 50 miles in some places every 100. Have you looked at that and thought about how much did that cost and how can you replicate that? Or anyway, thoughts?
So I can go quickly. So yes, so when we put together our map, we actually plotted the Tesla dots on our map with the expectation that those dots will eventually open up. So I will say that. And if you look at some of the stimulus dollars and you look at the language in there, it seems very apparent that if you will only charge one model, then you can't, accommodate those monies in dollars. And so I'm hopeful that that will go there. The answer, though, to your question is, did you look at that model and how much money? No. I gap filled, right? I have to go before regulators and justify the amount of money that I'm going to spend. And so for me and for our company and our coalition, we felt it was a much better option instead of say, hey, here's a $4 billion, whatever the number would be, plan, and we're going to have it all this. It's nope, we're going to leverage the existing structure and we're going to go to these places where the market isn't. So I will tell you that it was a consideration, and I'm hopeful that those Tesla stations will eventually be open to all makes and models. I believe they are in Europe, by the way. Somebody can double check me on that. But and if that happens, then all that is exponential, right? So if that switch gets flipped, now we're really going some places quickly, and I'm hopeful to see that. Matt?
Yeah, I think we looked at two problems for our customers that we try to solve to give them confidence to consider an EV. You're 12 years, I'm 12 days, right? Other customers will come along, and I think those two problems, are driven by the data. So and this is similar. You guys have seen this, right? 80% of people will charge at home. And so how do we help the 20% that don't have a garage or have access at a carport, et cetera? And then in that case, it's multifamily, charging at multifamily dwellings, and then also workplace charging. And so, we have worked with regulators to have some incentives to install about 1,000 charge ports in and around the St. Louis area to help that. But that's one drop in the bucket, so to speak. The other problem we were looking at to try to solve is what the map indicates is how do you then take that EV and not just drive your normal commuter to church on Sunday? How do you get across the state or across states, which is that foundational network? I would argue that living in a more rural area, such as my trip to Kingdom City, Missouri, and Jefferson City, Missouri, or if you look at outstate Illinois, which Ameren, Illinois, and I forget the statistic, but there are hundreds of square miles of outstate Illinois. If you draw kind of a line, 40 miles south of Chicago, we serve everything south of there from an Ameren, Illinois perspective. I think there were 6 charging stations in that hundreds of miles of square feet open to the public at the end of last year. So there's a great need in rural Missouri, rural America, in the areas that we serve, and really looking at how do we solve both of those problems, those that don't have access at home and then those that need to drive, across multiple states. And we looked, so to answer your question, sorry to opine, but we looked at the model, how do we solve both those questions? And so similar to the Tesla model, how do we get charging infrastructure in the right strategic locations or across major highways? That's the first thing we looked at.
Oh, yeah.
I want to make sure that you have a second to maybe throw one last thought or closing remarks for the panel here in the last few minutes that we have. We also have a question or two online, but maybe one question in here and then I have a question from online, but I think I'll go over here first. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve Hauser with AEIC. I applaud you guys' effort, it's great. But I wanted to understand the map a little bit better because obviously the purple represents service territories, it doesn't represent charging stations. And so are the members of the coalition committed to certain number of chargers per mile, per something, and in a certain time frame, and then how does that affect urban charging, or is it only the highway system charging? I just didn't quite understand what the commitment was in this coalition.
Yep, no, it's a fair question. So the answer is time frame, per mile, and charging speeds. Those are your commitments. Your interior, those will probably be level, we all have level 2, programs. we'll just let the level 2 programs kind of handle that. Whether you own them, whether you incentivize them, whether you rebate them, whatever that is, that's kind of a different story.
And you each have a different per mile time frame, or it's a common one?
No, it's common, right? So So join and sign the MOU, right? And we get.
I will say that's part of what we actually want to develop, right?
That is it.
Yeah.
You know, I can give you kind of the benchmark of, call it 100 miles, right? Just call it about 100 miles. Every 100 miles or so. Now, if you can leverage existing ones, right? As long as they have the certain parameters that we talked about, right? So we're, at least me as a voice in it, I'm not really thrilled with 50 kV charging. That's not customer centric. If you've ever done it, it is painful. So if you have one in your territory, I'm not going to make you pull it out. But that can't be the standard going forward.
And I would say just quickly on the map, we threw up there like major highways, right? It's going to be up to each coalition member to determine what those major travel corridors are that they want to serve. And to your point, it may be that Electrify America, EVgo, Tesla together has the major interstate pretty well covered. And then you look at state roads or the secondary thoroughfares that you need to cover. And that'll be part of what each member, I think, will be looking at for their own territory. Did you want to hit one from online and then?
I think you need more time maybe than a minute to answer the question, but it's around demand charges and justifying costs around EV fast chargers that might not be utilized immediately and how that goes. But that might be something that feeds into your kind of closing question of what's coming next or what are you guys kind of focused on moving forward. So if you can answer that quickly, if there's a one or two word, if not, maybe that's what we come.
Let me take a shot at it, Kellen. You know how much stuff we socialize? It's a red herring. I'm tired of this question. No. We socialize costs. It happens. I got news for you. It's on all of our bills. It is. But we do it for various reasons, very policy reasons, right? And so if you believe that electric transportation is good for whatever reason, but if you're a regulator in particular, and you think that the asset allocation that I talked about is going to happen and it's going to lower the bills for everyone, then adoption of electric vehicles becomes critical. If a hurdle to that is something that is a loss leader, then that has to happen. And that's part of our package that we are talking to our regulators about. And the minute somebody says, oh, no, you can't do that, socialization of costs. Yes, it is. And we do it all the time.
So let me then close it out here and give you all maybe one chance to just leave us with any closing remarks, but sort of framed around the question of where do you see this going next? I think you all touched on this a little bit. Now we have this coalition together. We announced it yesterday. We're sharing it with you all here today. A lot of work, I think, ahead of us. So just final remarks, what would you like to see this sort of head and accomplish in the next couple of years here? Matt, I'll let you go first with that one.
Yeah, you bet. First of all, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully you found some value. I really appreciate it, so thank you for that. I'll end where I started. This is consistent with us helping our customers and the environment get to net carbon zero. We have published goals on that, and it also helps with customer affordability. Keeping energy costs, low, stable, and predictable is an advantage to our communities in which we live, work, and serve. What's next is, I think, what is the customer experience? Well, let's get the infrastructure in the ground, and help our communities and stakeholders with that. And then, what's that customer experience? Is there common pricing models that would help customers, et cetera? Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Phil?
Yeah, I'd just say thank you to all of you. This is not easy, by the way. Right? This is just a small part of the complexity that the grid is going to have to absorb. Right. So when I talk about this, it's the grid was the platform. It was the number one thing. It won the award last century. Right, greatest thing. And we even went to the moon. We had computers. We got a phone thing that's pretty cool, by the way, and it won. And there's a chance it's going to be the repeat champion, right? Because it's a pretty nifty little platform that we've got here. But it's going to get incredibly more complex, and it's just going to get harder. And so, for me in the future, right, I don't ever want to. There are words in our industry that I don't really like saying over and over again. I'll leave that aside for now. But charger anxiety. If I don't have to say charger anxiety 5 years from now, that would be good. But again, I think for now, because the economics, the question about socialization, because the economics aren't there, but we know the benefits, the market's not going to solve the problem, right? The market doesn't solve for the public interest. It doesn't. It solves for different things, and there's an important part of it. Right now, we need this in it. So my hope is that this catalyst will, not only help the utilities and the customers, but will really just help this industry. Because I don't know that we want to be in the charger industry. We might. But I hope it really helps open up some of the doors to get a lot more of this infrastructure in the ground for our customers and our communities.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking Matt Fork and Phil Dion. Really appreciate it, guys.